Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petraglia with the final episode before summer break of the JungleRoar podcast. Why am I smiling so much? Well, that's one reason. Another reason is the guy on the other side, the one and only James Rapien of allbengals.com, the Locked On Daily Bengals podcast, one of the best podcasts out there covering your Cincinnati Bengals, not named the JungleRoar podcast. I have to say that, James, just to kind of pump my own.
I get it. For the brand, I get it.
Pump my own wheels and my own brand, correct. And you can follow James Rapien also, and should be, on Twitter at James Rapien, all one word. You doing well, bud? You're looking forward to the end of OTAs and your summer break a little bit?
I am, yeah. I'm planning on working on my tan. I plan on showing up to July, the end of the July at camp in great shape. And I hope to be a few shades darker than I am right now. So we'll see if I can get that done.
I should be a little bit darker by then. I love the summer, so I love hanging out in the sun. And while we're on the subject of OTAs, the OTAs wrap up this week. The Bengals about to get away for a couple of weeks, but it was interesting to me, James. I don't know if you agree with this, but Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow both saying this week, yeah, we're off for a couple of weeks, but this is not the time for full vacation mode. It is a time to kind of rehab our bodies, get rest, and come back ready and focused for the end of July.
Yeah, I think it varies from player to player, right? So for Joe Burrow, that's what I want to hear. And I think he'll take a couple trips, right? And I'm sure you might ask me about the Vegas trip with Jessie Bates. Yeah.
That would be
But ultimately, yeah, he does need to be locked in. I mean, he looks great. He's clearly put in the work, and he's the franchise guy. And so I would expect that. I would expect the head coach to say that as well. But for example, a guy like Dax Hill that's been preparing for the draft, and then he gets goes through the combine, continues to train, goes through all the interviews, then does all of the stuff that comes with pre-draft. Now's going to be the time for him to take a breather, because training camp is going to kick his ass. It's going to kick. Remember, Jamar Chase struggled in training camp. It's hard. It's a grind, even though it's not what it once was. And so I think some of these guys are going to have to take a vacation to mentally get ready. And then on the flip side, Burrow knows what's ahead. And so I think he was able to take enough of a break, and he's enough of a football freak to where he's already locked in, as he said.
The biggest storyline, and we'll get back to the OTAs in a little bit. The biggest storyline revolves around, of course, Jessie Bates, the Bengals safety, the free safety, and what happened this week with Minkah Fitzpatrick and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to get your impression on the impact of that, and whether or not you think that puts any more pressure on the Bengals. I don't think it does. I think the Bengals have him marked at a value, at a number, perhaps in the neighborhood of 4 years, 60 million. Don't think they're going to go much higher than that. Maybe 16 a year, but I don't think they're going 18 million a year over 4 years. No way.
I agree with you. And I don't think this changes much on their end. But here's why it changes things for Jessie Bates, because Jessie Bates, and by the way, I would say this too. He's looking at this and he says, oh, Minkah, well, it's not just Jamal Adams anymore that got the $17.5 million deal, because that was kind of like the outlier deal in the safety market. Well, now it's Minkah too. And Minkah gets $18.4 million per over 4 years, and it's a record-setting deal. And maybe Jessie doesn't get that, but he's going to want something similar. And so the other part of it is the guaranteed money, $36 million guaranteed. The Bengals have 3 guys over the $20 million guaranteed mark, and only one is a free agent in DJ Reader, $20.2 million in guaranteed money. Jamar Chase got $30 million in guaranteed money. Guess what? It's because he's the 5th overall pick and his rookie contract's guaranteed. Joe Burrow, $36 million guaranteed, first overall pick. So the Bengals haven't given out guaranteed money like that to any of these free agents that they've added over the past 3 years. And I don't anticipate them doing that with Jessie Bates this offseason before that July 15th deadline.
So one thing you point out, though, in the past, if they are going to do it, they are more inclined to do it with a player they're familiar with in their system, and they're more inclined to give more guaranteed money to their own. And I think that could happen here in this case. But again, I think you're right to point out the fact that it's not necessarily the average annual value of the contract that is going to be the big outlier or the big factor in whether or not a long-term extension gets done for Jessie Bates. It's whether or not, or it's a matter of how much money is going to be guaranteed for Jessie Bates. And I think that's the basic sticking point, and that's what it's going to come down to.
I do. I agree with you. And here's the thing with the Bengals guaranteed money philosophy. It's going to change. It's not if it changes. No, it's when. It's going to change, because guess what? They're going to have to guarantee a whole lot of money to Joe Burrow whenever they get that deal done. And I expect it to. But are they willing? And I'm going to go back to what you said. I think the Bengals look at Jessie Bates and they say, oh, well, Minkah Fitzpatrick was a 2-time All-Pro, first teamer, and a 2-time Pro Bowler. You have never been a first-team All-Pro. You have never been a Pro Bowler. And you're coming off of, and it wasn't a bad season, but for Jessie Bates' standards, it was the worst season of his career. So I think there are a lot of factors here. And the other one is the safety franchise tag is pretty affordable, $12.91 million. If Minkah's making 18.4, and that's what he's worth, you could get Bates for 12.91 this year. Let's say he goes out there, Trags, and plays at an all-world level, best safety in the NFL level, 8 interceptions, 27 passes defense. He's just all over the field. Let's just say that. Well, they can tag him again, and it'll probably give them decent value because the cap will be higher, and it'll be around 15 million per. So worst case, they could do that if he plays at a high level. And if he doesn't, well, then they're probably comfortable with letting him walk, or maybe he'll be willing to take less.
I also think it was interesting. I asked Joe Burrow about Jessie Bates, and he really spoke to his leadership quality and didn't necessarily say that there was a price tag you could put on it. As a matter of fact, he said you can put a price tag probably on what he does on the field. It's what he does for us as a teammate in the locker room that you can't really monetize, and you can't really put a dollar sign on. What did you think of his comments? And do you think that it puts any additional pressure is the wrong word, any additional emphasis and priority from his perspective on management to get a deal done?
Couple things there. First thing, when I heard Burrow talking about that, it took me back to a Zoom call that we had with Jessie Bates. I believe he was in his kitchen after the 2020 season. And that was a brutal, brutal year, right? 4 wins, 4-11-1. They had just gotten their head kicked in. I believe it was by the Ravens in that season finale.
Yes.
And Bates, he was like, yeah, I want to be the Joe Burrow of the defense. They were the same age. Burrow had been injured, obviously, but was clearly a leader, was already a captain as a rookie. And he came out and said it. He's like, look, I've gravitated to Joe Burrow. We're good friends, all of these things. I want to be the Joe Burrow of the defense. And what happens? Well, last year, with all the contract stuff, he still gets voted a team captain. You talk to a DJ Reader. You talk to a Mike Hilton, who's new, brand new, didn't know Jessie Bates in 2020, or might have known him, but didn't play with him in 2020.
Right.
And they speak so highly of him. So I think that the leadership aspect of this does matter. As far as Burrow's comments, I don't think he has the pull yet in the front office to be like, man, I want this guy and they got to do it. But I do think it matters. I think it matters when he says, yeah, Jessie's a guy, we want to see him, get his, essentially, and that we're rooting for Jessie. And they understand it's a business and they're mature enough. And I don't think that Joe Burrow would pout if a deal doesn't get done or anything like that. And by the way, I don't expect Jessie Bates to pout either. I think he'll be there for training camp. But would it help all matters if a deal gets done? Absolutely. And I think everyone's rooting for Jessie because of that leadership. Unfortunately, Trags, I don't see it. I don't see how a deal gets done if it hasn't gotten done already. And maybe it's because of deadlines force, decisions and force things to happen. But I don't think either side is blinking here. And so I think Jessie's going to have to play this season on the franchise tag.
I think it comes down to whether or not that Minkah Fitzpatrick deal and the guaranteed money impacts what Katie and Troy want to do in terms of offering him guaranteed money. And if they make the decision, okay, we're going to have to find a way because we really do want to get him back in the prime of his career at 25 and 26. We want to get him back on the field for us long term, and it's worth an extra $2 to $3 to $4 million extra guaranteed money to do that. We can find, some way somewhere else in the budget.
Yeah, I think that's in play. And here's the other thing. I mentioned the idea of back-to-back tags, right? Well, the 13 million, nearly 13 million that he's going to make this year is obviously guaranteed. If you tag him next year, and I'm just estimating around 15, and it could be a little higher, but $15 million, that would be guaranteed as well. So in 2 years, and again, he's got to play well for that to happen at a really high level, I think, for the Bengals to really consider that. But that's over $28 million guaranteed for 2 seasons. And that stinks if you do that and you don't get him locked up for another year or 2 under contract. So there is an argument that can be made to, hey, just try to find a way to get it done, even if there's $40 million guaranteed, because there's a path where you're paying almost 30 for the next 2 seasons if he does play well in 2022 and earn that tag again.
4 years, 60 million, 25 million guaranteed. Does he sign tomorrow?
No.
25 million guaranteed.
I think the Bengals would do that. No, I think he's going to say, I want more than Minkah guaranteed. I'm serious.
Minkah got 36. How much guaranteed? 22?
36.
Oh, 36. Correct. I'm sorry. 4 years, 30, 4 years, 60 million and 40 guaranteed. Then it gets done.
I think that gets done. I would be shocked. In fact, a couple rounds on me, and we could talk food, French fries, or adult beverages, couple rounds on me if they guarantee 2/3 of Jessie Bates' extension. I mean, think about that, 40 of 60. I mean, if I'm Bates, I would sign that, but I would be floored if that happened.
The fact that Bates and Burrow are going out to Vegas together, do you think that at all plays a factor in Joe saying, hey, look, we've got something really special here. We're going to be good for a long time. You know everything here. Let's keep doing this. Do you think that works into his thinking at all?
That part could. It could. And I just don't know if the Bengals, if they had won the Super Bowl, and it really does matter. If they had, it's like, man, come on, stick around. Everything's great here. They lost it. And so I think it's going to happen at some point where you can get guys to take a little less, still get huge money, take a little less to hang around and avoid going to, the Jets or going to the Texans or going to insert wherever where you're not necessarily going to win right away. But are the Bengals there after 1 season? That's my question. But here's the thing. Bates loves it in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. It's pretty close to Fort Wayne, where he's from, Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so that matters. Playing with Joe Burrow, I do think that matters some. And so there is a chance. I think there's a chance if a deal did get done, it would be Bates saying, you know what? I want to be in Cincinnati. I don't want to play on a 1-year deal. Let's get a deal done. Let's find some common ground, even if it isn't a Minkah type deal. Maybe it's slightly ahead of Marcus Williams, where it's like 15 million per, like you've said. And if I think the Bengals would be willing to go there, I don't know that. Maybe I'm wrong and they're not, but I think they would be willing to.
Speaking with James Rapien of allbengals.com and the Locked On Bengals Daily Podcast. James, when Joe Burrow said it's go time, do you think that was directed at anybody in the organization, or was that just a way of reminding everybody, I cannot wait for the end of July to get going?
I think he's already going. Like that's the thing. I think Burrow's one of those freaks that, yeah, he took a little time off, but you think about how his progression. So he transferred to LSU and instantly had to go in and earn that job. And then that off season that he had, and then boom, he's the most famous quarterback in college football. And then it's the draft process and he's working there. And then he's the number 1 pick and having to deal with COVID and all of those things and finding ways to work out. And then it was rehab. And then it was last year's Super Bowl run. He didn't really have time to take a breath for years, like 3 years. And so I think he took a breath, and I would say late February, right? After that Super Bowl run, early March. And now he's like, okay, let's go. That's it. Let's go. I'm a grinder. That's it. I'm locked in. And that's what I expect of him. And you could really tell it. I think he looks lean, but muscular.
Yes.
And
he definitely looks different to me. Yes. He does.
And that's hard to do, man. It is, because he was already in great shape. Like, we're talking about an NFL player. So for them to get to another level where they look different in person and you can really tell that part of it, I just think he's one of those guys, and you covered one in New England. I brought it up before you did, where they just, that's it. That's their life. They have other stuff. They have family, or, and Burrow's tight with his family. He's got a girlfriend. He does all these things. He plays video games. It's not like he's not doing other stuff, but man, he is just such a football freak that's what I think he's going to be doing for most of June and July.
And I'm glad you brought it up first, not me, so I can jump on this point. And I want to make this point in a very, very serious manner. Tom Brady, at his stage of his career, and he has fully admitted this in the past, was not the physical specimen anywhere close to what he was later in his career. And even now, he's not ripped. He's not muscular. What Joe Burrow is he's lean, muscular, and the only thing now for Burrow to become is a little bigger. And the reason for that, I think last couple of years, but last year in particular, had a huge impact on his willingness and wanting to take hits and take the physical abuse of an NFL season. And I think his attitude was, if it's going to be like this, even if I have an improved offensive line, which clearly he expects to have, I think everybody does. But he's still going to take some hits just because he's going to hold on to the ball and complete passes downfield. His body's got to be more prepared physically for the wear and tear of taking those hits.
No doubt about it. And I think he's done a great job of that, but he does, because he holds on to the ball. He wants to take those hits.
Correct.
So he's got to prepare his body for that. And he's still going to get sacked some. He's still going to hold on to the ball longer to try to make plays downfield. What you hope to avoid with the upgraded offensive line is obviously the quick stuff that just completely derails plays, the quick pressures. But yeah, I think he's done a good job. I mean, it's really hard, because in our business, you want to be reasonable and fair. And with a guy with a guy like Burrow, it's really hard to be critical, because it seems like he always has the right answer. He always has the right, demeanor about him. He always, just the way he carries himself, all of those things. And obviously he puts the work in. Yeah.
There's no question that he has all of that. And I think what's impressed me about Burrow this offseason is his flat line, his ability to, I'm not going to get too high, too low after what happened in February, after all the hits I took, with all the speculation about the offensive line. He's just maintained this steady flat line or even maybe trying to not even flat line, but increase steadily his progress with the organization. That's what I think he's done. The fact that he said he feels normal again, that was a little nugget that I think went under the radar a little bit when he was asked about his sprint time. He had a 20.8 mile per hour speed in his post-practice sprint. And what he said was that, I'm not going to say I was hyped about it. It just feels good to feel normal again. Those were important words to hear from Joe Burrow.
Yeah, no doubt, because it kind of explains, hey, he didn't necessarily feel normal even during that Super Bowl run. And he took a lot of nicks and was dinged up and had the other knee and the pinky and all of those things. And I think he fought through a lot of stuff last year. And I was talking to one of the Bengals veterans, and on the defensive side of the ball, and he's newer. He's been around a little bit, but he's newer. But he's been on playoff teams prior to coming here. And he's like, man, that dude is so tough. He is so tough. He was so excited, this veteran was, about them getting offensive line help. And he's a defensive player, right? He's right. Someone that, hey, sure, they'd want another pass rusher, and he's and it would help his job. And he's like, no, I'm so happy that they added offensive line help. And I think it's because of his toughness.
All right. His comments about he figures to see more too high, more cover two. Joe Burrow's comments this week about that. Do you think that's playing a little coy, reverse psychology? I hope people's defensive coordinators read this and think, oh, I'm preparing for more too high, so they'll not play the too high so he can throw deep and throw the ball and get more big plays. And the other thing that he did say was, we can't be so dependent on the big play to convert on third down. I think he means that. I think he's like, look, I'm tired of throwing desperation heaves on, like when I asked him after one of the games that they won, and I can't even remember the game, but he's like, F it. I know Jamar's down there somewhere. I'm just going to throw it up and he's going to go get it. I don't think he genuinely doesn't want to do that coming into this season, at least as much.
I believe that was Chiefs AFC North game when Jamar went off for 266 and 3 touchdowns, and he had that big third down conversion, back shoulder downfield. Yes. I might be wrong on that. But I do a couple things. I do believe that they struggled with the too high looks last year, and they need to be more efficient, and they should be, because they can run it behind Alex Kappa and Lyle Collins, and that right side should be great against the run. Not that the left side won't, but I think that right side, that's where the bread and butter is going to be for Joe Mixon in short yardage. And that's a big part of them being efficient. They couldn't sustain drives because they were like the worst team in the NFL, it felt like, at 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. They could not get that. They may pick up 8 yards on first down and end up punting early in the game. Hard to get into a rhythm when that stuff happens. So no, I think so. I think that this team now is built offensively. If you want to go too high and try to take away Jamar, fine. We have a quarterback that's going to see that, and we're going to be able to give him time, and he's going to take what you're giving him, and it's not going to be an issue of 2.5 steps and he better launch this ball or he's going to get crushed. That's the part of it that really, especially in the playoffs, was very clear. They could not protect, and it impacted the entire offense. I think there are going to be pages and pages of Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan's offensive playbook that they could actually use this year that weren't even really in play from maybe at all last season, honestly. I was going to say late in the year, but maybe at all. And so I believe that. I believe that the other thing, and I read this, a lot of the teams that they play this year, and I forget where I read it, so I apologize to who I'm not crediting. A lot of teams that they play this year usually play single high. And so that's interesting too. And it might be 10 out of 17 or 11 out of 17, whatever it is, 17 games. But still, will you be willing to play single high if you're a team that usually does that against a team, let's be honest, you got T. Higgins on one side and Jamar Chase on the other? It's pretty frightening downfield.
Okay, what I noticed in OTAs, and maybe this was unusual, maybe it wasn't, I noticed a lot of routes seam and flat out routes to Hayden Hurst. I think Hayden Hurst is going to be a huge part of what they do in the pass game and what Burrow can do to, if they show funky looks to try and take away Jamar and take away the deep coverage, the seam route should be wide open, or at least man-on-man coverage at the very least.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I'm excited for Hayden Hurst. And I think he's going to be one of those guys, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and we haven't seen him play with pads on, that Joe Burrow, that invites Joe Burrow to, I don't know if Hayden Hurst is married, but certainly to his wedding, to his any grill outs, any cookouts, any special events, because Joe Burrow is going to make Hayden Hurst a lot of money this season. Yeah. Hayden Hurst is going to go out and have a career year, and he's going to get paid from someone, and he's 30. He's going to be 30 after this year. And so this is the year to do it. And I think he came to the right place with the right coaching staff and the right quarterback, where if I told you, Trags, Hayden Hurst has 10 touchdowns this year or 750 receiving yards, which is pretty damn productive in this type of offense.
Right.
Would it make you blink? Because it would not shock me if that's the case. Now, I think that's
not at all.
Probably the ceiling, but
of those 10 TDs, how many will be red zone TDs? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, maybe half. We haven't seen him work a lot in the red zone. I think there's going to be a lot of catch and run for him. Think about Uzama after the catch last year. I think Hayden Hurst is the better athlete.
I think he's faster. That's what I've noticed. And I agree that his speed is no joke. And obviously, we made fun of him a little bit about him talking about his speed. And there was a reason I was a number 1 pick, first round pick a couple of years ago when the Ravens took him. There's a reason for that. I was one of the fastest tight ends out there. Well, I think he's shown that. I think the one thing you can tell, I think, in OTAs is the way guys approach their route running skills. And what I saw with Hayden Hurst is this guy's legit fast. I mean, he is going to be a receiving weapon.
For sure. And he's a little fantasy football advice. Tight end's a really weird position. Totally someone I would target because he's going to be a buy low with a pretty high ceiling. So there you go. You didn't know I was going to drop a little fantasy.
No, I
would
did
totally
not.
target Hayden Hurst.
But one of the many reasons I love having you on, James, is you always bring that little extra. Left guard competition. As we wrap up this last JungleRoar podcast before the summer. Obviously, no pads, no contact, but Jackson Carman has stayed in the first team the whole OTA session, which to me indicates that I think he's putting in the work in the classroom and he's showing the right effort level, at least off the field, to keep that position. Do you think I'm reading too much into it?
Maybe
Yes.
to a degree,
Yeah.
maybe to a degree. Yeah. I think that the Bengals are aware of everything that's gone on with Jackson Carman from a question mark standpoint, pre-draft, from a work ethic standpoint, from all of those things, right? Showing up to camp overweight, all of those things. And so if you put someone else with the first team, it does make some waves. We instantly notice. It instantly becomes a story. Here's what I would say is in camp, if he's the only guy getting first team reps, I'd be pretty shocked. And this might have been introducing Cordell Volson to what life's going to be like for him in 6 weeks, introducing Deontay Smith to the tackle spot even more, or throwing him into it even more, even though he could still compete for left guard. But Carman's the favorite. I would agree with you there. He does look like he's in good shape. Does he have the right makeup? Does he have the right mindset? And honestly, is he good enough to win that job and consistent enough? Those are things that we really aren't going to know until camp. But I would agree with you. It does look like he's in good shape and not the guy that I saw last July when I was honestly really floored that he showed up to camp the way he did. Because it was fair to say this. It was embarrassing for a guy that the franchise was really banking on to stabilize one of these guard spots.
Of all the rookies, the 6 rookies, and now Cordell Volson is signed on the dotted line. All 6 are under contract. Which rookie do you think can make the most impact? I'm not going to say which rookie can make the starting 22, but which rookie do you think can make the biggest impact? Is it Dax Hill? Is it Cordell Volson or somebody else?
It's all about Dax, baby. Cordell Volson could certainly, make the impact if he wins that starting job. But to me, Dax, he just fits. He fits anything. He fits if you got Jessie Bates and Von Bell. He fits if Von Bell vanishes tomorrow. He fits if you need a 4th corner to play a nickel spot if you want. I think he's got the length and speed to play outside. Like, I think he's just this versatile Swiss Army knife that we're going to look up in October, and he's going to see just steadily increasing snaps. And there's going to be different ways they use him, and they're going to blitz him, and they're going to have him in different areas. And who knows, maybe we see Von Bell like this hybrid linebacker, and you put Hill and Bates back there on the back end. That could be really interesting depending on what the opponent is and who you're going up against. So no, I have high expectations for Dax Hill, and I think he's going to be able to make an impact right away. Cam Taylor-Britt, who knows? Maybe he does. Maybe he pushes Eli Apple. We haven't seen a lot of him from OTAs. Not concerned about that, but we'll see in camp. Zachary Carter, I think, could contribute, but ultimately, if Volson doesn't win the starting job, and I think it's, the odds are stacked against him. That's hard to do. I think it's going to be Dax Hill, and I think he's going to have a hell of a rookie year.
88 of the 90 spots are filled. Do the Bengals sign a receiver or someone else? Because I know you wrote about this.
Yeah.
Finish with a flurry here, James. How do the Bengals approach those final 2 roster spots? Do they leave them open, like Zach Taylor said, in case they need somebody? Do they go out and sign somebody?
I think they'll go out and sign someone. I mean, there's more than 2 roster spots open for Zach. Like, he knows that 10 of those guys aren't making the team easy. I could probably name 15 or 20 that aren't really in the running necessarily. So if they needed more than that, they could do that. Sure. No, I think Larry Ogunjobi, if I had to guess today, I think he comes back. Makes sense. Super Bowl contender, knows he fits the scheme, knows he can be productive and get paid next offseason. So we'll see if that happens. To me, here are the three spots I would want. I would want a wide receiver 4. I would want an offensive lineman, maybe Riley Reef, got some swing guard tackle potential, and Larry Ogunjobi. I don't think they're going to sign all three of those guys. That would be me. And for the receivers part, I know there's been a lot of Odell Beckham Jr. talk. I wouldn't say no to it. It's Odell freaking Beckham Jr.
Right.
But Will Fuller to me is a take the top off the defense. He is fully healthy now. So those are the two that stand out to me the most. Another one that's more under the radar that wouldn't have the same impact. D.D. Westbrook. I think he's a Jag. I think he's just a guy, much like a lot of these wide receivers are behind the big three on the Bengals roster. So Odell though, or Fuller, now we're talking. We're talking scary hours for opposing secondaries if they get one of those two.
It has been a pleasure having you on, James. As always, I want to wish you and your lovely bride, Emily, a wonderful summer. Hope you guys get some relaxation and get really juiced up for the upcoming season. I cannot wait.
Yep, I can't wait either. I can already taste the Saturday night pops, Trags, but I will enjoy this time, and I appreciate you having me as always.
Anytime. He is James Rapien. He does a tremendous job for covering the Bengals for allbengals.com. Obviously, hit up his podcast on a regular basis, Locked On Bengals, the only daily podcast out there covering your Cincinnati Bengals. And of course, follow him on Twitter at James Rapien, all one word. For James Rapien, I'm Mike Petraglia. Thanks for watching the JungleRoar podcast, and we'll talk to you on the other side of summer break.